Happy Vesak, if indeed it is Vesak today where you are. Vesak is the main Buddhist festival and holiday, certainly a holiday in Buddhist countries, a bank holiday, a national holiday, and much like Christmas in Christian countries, usually celebrated on the full moon in the day of May. This year it's slightly different. In Thailand it is going to be on the full moon of June, around the 3rd or 4th of June. However, in India, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, it is being celebrated today, so there, happy Vesak to you. I hope your celebrations are going well and you're enjoying the programs in place and all you have in store for this holiday. In Western countries, it will depend on whom your Sangha, your monasteries, attached to or originates from, whether it's from Thailand or one of those formerly mentioned countries, as to when you'll be celebrating it. Why it's different, I'm not entirely sure. It's actually, as far as the next festival, or not festival, change in seasons, is the Vassa, which begins usually on the full moon of July, when the monks go into 3 months of retreat for the monsoon time, the rainy season. And at this time, we're not allowed to go anywhere. We stay in one place, stay in one monastery. If you go back to the beginnings of these videos, I started making these videos, recording my ramblings at the beginning or thereabouts, the first few weeks of last year's Vassa, so towards the end of July, beginning of August. And although this wasn't meant to be any kind of diary or whatever you call it, in a way I suppose it has turned out that way, because you can, if you go to the beginning, follow my stay in Tumkur in Karnataka, South India, for 3 months in a monastery, alone, just one monk, for 3 months, 90 days. And various trips and ramblings around that part of the world. And subsequently, I went on Tudong. I went wandering throughout southern India, well, to the coast really, and lived outside in the forest and in the mountains and the jungles and on the beach. Then my monastery features there in Bangalore, where I reported back to, visited on each of these, like today, Uposita days, where the monks get together and recite their monastic rules, the Patimokkha, 227 rules. And I mention that quite often. That time stamps the videos really through each month. There are 2, the full moon and new moon. So I've just come from the temple, being it is the Uposita today, or one pra, as they call it here in Thailand. And you'll get this video 24 hours later. So it was yesterday. So to you, happy Vesak yesterday, if you're celebrating it during the full moon of May. And then these videos have carried on. I came to Thailand in January, really just as a visa run. I have to leave the country, India, every 6 months. And look, I can return immediately within you need to give it a week with the Indian immigration people. So I had planned to come here for a little while, maybe a few weeks or a month, but I'm still here, and I love it very much. So I will stay here if I can, and I think I can. But we're never sure. Everything's uncertain. Like I didn't know I was going to be staying here. I don't know whether. You can't determine these things. Indeed, you may be seeing this video, I may be already dead. If it's coming to you 24 hours later, then indeed, that's plenty of time for someone to expire die, disappear. These things happen. If I am gone, then there'll be no more videos, so bye for now. Until next lifetime when we meet again. But here we aren't going to be celebrating the Vassa until next month. So there is another Uposita, a new moon of May, and then the next new moon will be the beginning of June, which will be the Vassa in Thailand. And in Thailand it is very much a holiday, national holiday, bank holiday as we call those in England and I think Europe. A big festival. We have a few other little things going on here in the monastery, but at the moment we're just down to 3 monks, the 2 ajahns, the abbot and the most senior in Vassas. We count our monastic years by those rains retreats of 3 months. Each rains retreat you complete is 1 Vassa. So this is how long you've been a monk. Not from when you were ordained. That counts only when you're comparing your place in the line with another monk of the same number of Vassas. But other than that, if you've had 20 Vassas, it's because you've spent 20 complete rains retreats. If you don't complete a rains retreat, for instance, you disappear off the face of the earth and come back 3 weeks later because you, for no real reason, you didn't stay in one place, you've broken a rule, you don't count that Vassa. You have to complete the 3 months, 90 days in one place. With the exception, you can leave for emergencies and you can go away to different places, but for no more than 6 nights. This was how I was allowed to go to Bangalore, which took a couple of days with the 12-hour trip on the bus there and back, overnight and return, overnight, and therefore that was okay during the Vassa time. This year's Vassa is starting in August, not July, the full moon of August. And being as this is kind of then at the end of that 3 months, the beginning of the Buddhist or monastic year, our number of moons is such that this year it's worked out that there's not been enough full moons for Vassa in Thailand, Vesak in Thailand to be May. It needs to be June. And then in July, again, the moon has moved forward. As you see, there's 29.5 days between moons, not 30 days. So it's moving forward all of the time. Next year, it all goes back to the beginning again. And the Vassa will be, the Vesak and the Vassa will be early, the full moon early in July and May. And sometimes there are 2 full moons in any one month, and this makes it even more confusing. That wasn't what I was supposed to be talking about at all, but we're down to 3 monks here for the moment, as I was saying, just the most senior monk, the abbot, 2 ajahns, both more than 10 Vassas, and myself. And we have a samanera, a novice monk. And therefore we don't recite the Patimokkha. We have a shorter formal ceremony of purification, confession, and stating that we haven't broken the rules before each other, just the 3 monks that are there, because to have the full recitation of the Patimokkha there need to be a minimum of 4. So all very official things that can happen, ordinations or various ceremonies in the Sangha, need to have at least 4 bhikkhus present. So, for instance, in the end of the Vassa, when we receive rains cloth, which is when people give new robes to the monks, there need to have been at least the 1 monk staying the entire rains, but another 4 need to come along to make up the numbers in order for that ceremony to occur. And you can see that ceremony on these videos here, which, yes, seem to be accounting for a part of my experience as a relatively new bhikkhu. living in different countries, firstly India and now here, for a long time. 2.5 years in India, and now 4 months here. And I suppose therefore they are a little bit like that, a record of I don't call it my journey, because I don't consider this practice towards becoming free from suffering in this lifetime a journey, because it isn't going anywhere. I could do what I'm doing anywhere. I don't have to be here. Although there were restrictions in my own country as to ordination for age reasons. I left it a little bit too late, and normally speaking, you cannot ordain over the age of, or take ordination over the age of 50 in the UK. And although I wasn't 50, by the time you've spent 1 year or 2 years as an anagarika in white robes, and then another year or 2 years as a samanera, a novice monk, I would have been over 50. So therefore there was no option really for me. I think, if I'd persuaded them, they would have maybe been flexible. But it's just a lot easier it was for me to come to Thailand. And then various obstacles got in the way, but I ordained in India, which was a great thing to do anyway. Being able to ordain with the Sangha in not only the land of the Buddha, where this all comes from, but in the place where the Buddha was enlightened on this day, Vesak, the full moon of May, 2,566 years ago, or if you've passed through this time of Vassa, 67 years ago. But of course, these timings aren't accurate. This Vesak is the day we celebrate the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and death. And I'll talk about this in a lot more detail next month. But people don't get born, get enlightened, and die on exactly the same day. Maybe because he was the Buddha, he did. But I think for convenience sake and for convention, it has been set on this one day. And similarly, this part of the year, and it moves accordingly, and in accordance with the constraints of the society or the country where you're practicing, it will be on slightly different days. Now, I was talking, and this is to finish off what I was talking about yesterday, about how we can use this practice to deal with pain. Now, of course, if you are new to Buddhism, if you are new to meditation, there are not the foundations in place to use this practice to work miracles and get rid of pain. But I talked a little bit about techniques and things we can do. But what I wanted to really elaborate on was that if you have the opportunity, even if you are suffering some pain now, before that pain gets worse, or if you're fortunate enough to be relatively healthy, you will at some point in your life have to experience and endure pain, even if it's at the point of death. Now, it sounds quite morbid and miserable, but this practice to some extent is a rehearsal, a practice for death. We're learning how to die, because we're learning how to be more free of attachments that we have, materialistic attachments, and also our attachments to this body, and even attachments to our thoughts, our mental attachments of liking and disliking. We're trying to get rid of greed, hatred, and delusion. So greed is that wanting, attachment, that craving. Hatred is that aversion and that anger that can come up, that even fear, which is just the real aversion to the unknown and uncertainty. And delusion is this confusion through lack of wisdom. So what this practice is, as explained in the Noble Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness and right meditation, is broken into three parts of sila, samadhi, panya. And sila is the moral virtue. And on this day, the Uposatha day, or one Phra, in Buddhist countries, it is reinforced. The lay people reinforce their 5 precepts, sometimes by staying in the monastery and expanding that to 8 precepts, for instance. The 5 being just no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants. And when they expand them to the 8 precepts, they change the 3rd precept to no sexual conduct, no sexual activity whatsoever, and they don't eat in the afternoon, so after midday, when the monks, the sangha, are not allowed to eat any food, solid food. The lay people join them in that as a practice of renunciation, as a practice of training to help with these processes we have of desire, to help bring our awareness to them. And no beautification, dressing up, perfumes and jewellery, so they wear simple, plain coloured, light or white clothes or something like that, and not sleeping or lounging around in comfortable sofas and chairs and sleeping in high and luxurious sleeping places like big comfy beds. They just stay in the monastery on a mat like this on the floor, or at home. They usually practice this for just the day, but they avoid excesses of luxury and comfort. But not discomfort. This isn't a practice of being uncomfortable. It's the middle path. Now the Buddha, he left a life of opulence and luxury, and he practiced for 6 years as an ascetic until he became emaciated and thin and practically nearly died. He experienced that there was suffering in terms of this opulent and lavish lifestyle, in that you could never get enough of what you want and what you love and what you enjoy. It's insatiable, this desire. And when trying the opposite, he found that the suffering he was just creating for himself, and the pain and anguish and the starvation and physical aspect of suffering was not improving the situation either. And what he found, that it was somewhere in the middle, this middle path, that we arrive at, to find a balance in life whereby we can really understand what our desires are doing to us, how they're making us react, and how we are a slave to that master of desire. And what we're trying to do is become free from slavery, break the chains to samsara, this worldly life of attachment to materialistic things, of having to work hard to pay for all these materialistic things. Often one can simplify one's life quite dramatically without losing any quality to your existence, just by reducing the things that we think we need but only are things we want, like the new upgraded phone, the new upgraded car, TV, bigger house, more expensive holidays, special clothing, all of these things that we really can do without and form a large part of our budget and our expenditure. By doing without, and one can experience this for this one day of Upasatas, or 2 days a month, if you're in a Buddhist country, taking the 8th precept of living simply for 1 or 2 days per month, you can experience that actually, yeah, life is not that bad. Now as a monk living in India and now living here in Thailand, we take it a little further, a lot more rules, but they're not rules. They're just guidance notes, really literal step-by-step points of how to support those main precepts that I first mentioned of no killing, stealing, no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or taking of intoxicants, so that we really are supporting those precepts which are really just doing no harm to either ourselves or any other beings. Now, back to pain. if you're a meditator and you really can get into deep states of absorption that we call samadhi, pain really is something that can be of the past, something you don't need to really be concerned about, because you can meditate and be free from a lot of pain that you will experience in life. But that takes some time, and it really does take an established practice to be able to get into what you may have heard of called jhanas, or deep states of samadhi and absorption, whereby you're free from bodily feelings, and to some extent free from mental anguish also, and therefore free from those two pains of physical and mental pain. And that can be done. But in order to be able to develop your practice of meditation, even a little bit towards that in the first place, one has to have a sound foundation and firm basis of morality, of keeping sila. Why? Because if you've broken any of those precepts, it will disturb your equanimity, it will disturb your balance, it will come into your meditation through concern of if you've done something wrong, if you've caused any harm either to yourself or others. It is something you're going to be worrying about that you've done in the past, and its ramifications and how this will affect your future. Now, of course, if you can live a life of moral virtue, keeping those 5 precepts, when you sit down to meditate, really everything before you meditated and everything after you meditated is really quite unimportant and trivial, and can be left just where they are, in the past and in the future. I mean, the past has gone and the future hasn't happened. They're irrelevant anyway. But of course, if you've done something really bad, it's going to be there right now, in this present moment, bothering you. This is the karmic consequence. This is the effect, the causes and conditions you've created for this moment now. But in this moment now, even if you have transgressed, you can create good karma, good actions of body, speech and mind by simply practicing meditation and developing wholesome mind states. Now, with this background, with this basis, with this foundation, you will be able to practice meditation and develop it to a stage whereby you can really beat pain. Why? Because you can attain these states of deep absorption in samadhi. But as far as ordinarily the way things are ordinarily for most people who don't practice to this level in their meditation, it's okay, because now is not too late to start. So try starting this. Try just keeping those simple precepts, and try regular meditation, and you will get there. But it is not trying. I've just said try 3 or 4 times. Wrong word. Trying is not what this practice is about. You see, the precepts are not asking you to do anything. They're asking you to refrain from doing something. They're not saying, thou must do this, thou must do that, thou must do this, or anything like that. They're saying, refrain from killing, refrain from, let's just call it all, refrain from doing any harm to either yourself or others, and think of it that way. So yeah, just don't do those things. And when you sit and meditate, don't try. Sit and go with the flow. Now, let's think of life as the ocean, with all its vicissitudes, storms and changes, both physically and emotionally coming along. Physical pain and its associated emotional pain. And you need to cross the ocean. This is life. Well, you can row, and it's hard work, but you'll get there, fighting all of the way. Or you could pop up the sails and sail across with the wind. So this practice is more like sailing. going with the energies that are there, rather than trying to row against it. To some extent you'll have heard the expression going against the stream, being that the stream of samsara, ordinary life, worldly life, is making us want things. This is just commercialism. This is just the industrial nature of the world. This is where greed has got a grip on society. Hatred has got a grip on society. And the exploitation of delusion, our confusion, has made us fuel that greed, fuel that hatred in ourselves, and then the endless circle of this fueling, developing greed and wanting more, trying to satisfy insatiable desires, where there are always promises that this next best thing will just do that. We really do know that it won't, but we still get this next best thing. So start by never having the best, newest version. Always have the year-old, older version. The year-old car rather than the new car. Do you know what? When I first started that practice, when I could have new things, and I decided, no, I'll have 1 or 2 years old of everything, the previous version, you find they're a lot more, they work a lot better, because all of the little problems that the new things have been ironed out, gone. Not to mention they're considerably cheaper, and you're less concerned about this thing. It's not new. If it gets a little scratch, it doesn't matter. It had a scratch when you got it. It's just another scratch. You've got a brand new thing, one scratch, oh, it's no longer new. Like that. Where was I going with this? This is going against the stream simply by not falling into that flow of commercial entrapment to buy stuff. When you walk through the airport, it's an amazing place. So glitzy and gold and flashing and lights and perfume smells and gadgets and everything. Why? You're just going on a journey on a plane somewhere, but there's all this stuff. You want to keep your luggage down, not take more. If you're a normal traveller, as a monk we have nothing, so we could buy so much, couldn't we? But we can't. We don't have money. And we don't want to, because we know what a trick that is. It's preying on people's boredom, and also that they're good mood. They're in a really good mood, they're going somewhere. Or they're in a really bad mood, so they need to be cheered up. Whatever it is, and there's also this enticement that it might be cheaper, because it's near the duty-free place, it's considered cheaper, but it's actually not necessarily cheaper when you look at the prices. The duty-free bits are, but all the stuff going to, it's not. So I wasn't always a monk, so I've checked these things out. I used to travel a lot before I was a monk. More I travelled before I was a monk. And the reason I say it's not a journey is because this journey of mine has been to stop travelling, and I hope now I have. I just needed to find a place where I could practice. And because I've chosen a tradition of Buddhism that is practicing this path in the forest, literally, this is the ideal place. And it's taken a while for many reasons. Firstly, my own personal commitments and family duties and bereavements and this and that. And then secondly, the COVID pandemic was a big delay on things as to location. But I'm here in the end. But nevertheless, when we learn that we're going to sail with the winds, the vicissitudes of life, rather than rowing against them, we find that life becomes a lot more easy to deal with. Things are more bearable. One thing we develop in wisdom is the understanding that all things are impermanent. We call that anicca in the Pali language. All things are unsatisfactory or suffering, which we call dukkha. And that we are not in control, is my translation, or a translation, but anatta, which means not self. So it's not down to us even how these bodies work, whether our heart will stop beating, our brain will embolize and stop working, or our lungs will stop breathing. You know, we don't know when that will happen. Maybe before I get a chance to make another video, you could be watching this and you, as I said before, there may not be no more. I wonder what happens then to them. I suppose they just stay there. Interesting thought. So we can, with pain, come to the understanding that the more we resist it, the more it hurts. We do have to relax, and I know it's easier said than done. But some of those exercises I was talking about yesterday of just really relaxing your face, really bringing your awareness to the breathing in through the nose, relaxing your hands, and this kind of thing, wherever your pain is, whether it's point specific or generally a radiation all over kind of pain, these physical exercises do help. And this in turn helps the mind settle. And really, this is really what we need to work on. And the way we work on the mind and developing its ability to deal with pain is through the holistic practice of Buddhism, of Sila Samadhi Panya, which is ultimately developing what we call the 4 Brahma Viharas, which are firstly loving kindness. And this deserves a whole talk, so I'm just going to touch upon them. But loving kindness, you may have heard the word metta. Loving kindness is just that. It is thinking, not all lovey-dovey, I love everybody and don't hate anyone, but just thinking kindly as a mother would to her child, whatever it does, of anyone, all beings. And making a positive, energetic effort to think that way. It doesn't mean sitting radiating this kind of thing. It's just being it, being full of metta. Firstly for yourself, being kind to yourself, and then something that it comes easily to you to be kind to, your cute pets or your little children or whatever, and then slowly graduating out towards people you're neutral about, and then even people you don't like, knowing that after all their mother loves them. So why can't you not love them? Just treat them kindly, with a loving heart. Then there's karuna, compassion, which is compassion for people who are suffering as a result of greed, hatred and delusion. And they haven't seen the light yet. They haven't become enlightened. They haven't developed wisdom. They haven't heard of moral virtue, meditation and the development of wholesome mind states. Have compassion for these people, because this is why they may be driven towards trying to harm you or just interrupting your intentions. Have compassion for those that are annoying you, invading your space, disrupting your peace, because they don't understand. I don't mean it in a patronizing way. Help them if you can. But this helps you develop a better sense of well-being, because what you're doing is working on your own hatred. And then the next one is mudita, which is empathetic or sympathetic joy. So when someone has a bit of luck, or they're feeling happy, you feel happy for them. And this helps you work on that horrible feeling of jealousy, because you're just so happy they're having a good result. They got the promotion, I didn't. Rather than feel disappointed that you didn't get the promotion, you feel positive and great that they got the promotion. If needs be, think, oh, well, they're going to have that extra pressure. I can just chill out now until the next opportunity comes along. But what this leads to is the fourth of those 4 Brahma Viharas. Brahma Viharas, as I've just referred to them, is basically a abiding place. like the heavenly realms of abiding. It's the goal of where we need to really settle our citta, that knows, in this Brahma Viharas of metta, karuna, mudita, and finally upekkha, which means equanimity. And this is the key. Equanimity is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment, and it's so important. Equanimity means unreactiveness. You'll become equanimous to all that goes on around you. If you see yesterday's video, a tree fell on the roof, and you may have noticed I jumped a little bit like this. So I didn't go, whoa! I might have done that a few years ago, but I do still jump a little bit. Now that jumping is a reaction naturally in the body, but you can really develop your equanimity to the extent whereby you won't jump. To some extent it's being aware of the unexpected. So for instance, if I walk from here now to where I get my coffee, it's getting dark, there could be a snake come across the path, a big snake. And before I would have jumped and, oh dear, or run away or something. Now I'll, oh well, there's a snake. Because you know it's to be expected. But sometimes these things come unexpectedly. But still, through this practice of developing metta, karuna, and mudita, you're also practicing equanimity, this unreactiveness. This all comes as part of panya wisdom, this understanding of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and things being out of your control. Basically the whole unexpectedness of life. So the unexpectedness of life gives us the opportunity to sail with the flow of things rather than row against it. And this develops equanimity. And this is your biggest tool, weapon against pain. Upekkha, equanimity. When pain comes along, if you're equanimous to it, it gives up trying. It's like someone knocking on the door. If you don't answer, they'll go away. If you don't make a sound, they'll go away. Pain comes knocking on your door. If you're equanimous, it might not go away, but your aversion to it will go away. And this way you are being ultimately kind to yourself, because you will, even without having these stages of meditation whereby you can not feel the pain, you can be at one with the pain. Know the pain. It's pain, it's just that. It will on its own accord, as it's a conditioned thing, a result of causes and conditions. All conditioned things are impermanent, anicca. It will in turn leave you, go away. So on this rather varied talk, jumping from one thing to another, the point being that Buddhism helps us to be happy. The idea of Buddhism is to be happy. Not become, not be anything, but contentment through the lack of craving or desire. Contentment results in happiness. And when you're happy, then when bad things happen, when you're content, you can deal with them more equanimously, with more equanimity, and therefore you suffer less. So you become a sailor rather than a rower. You're not tensing, so things don't hurt so much. You're more relaxed. So we stop trying and we just do no thing, do nothing. Not in a passive, lazy, ignoring everything way, in a way of calculated, understanding calmness, sitting and observing. Now the mosquitoes are getting quite furious. I'm getting bitten all over, and it's getting dark, so I think again I've spoken a little longer than I expected or planned to. But thank you very much for watching, and I hope if there's something useful in there you can use it or share it, or if not, don't. And enjoy, well, you can't enjoy the rest of your Vesak because it was yesterday. So I shall leave it at that.